Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could teach the gullible to never be so comfortable with lies they eat like comfort food? To disregard the bogus claims and pseudo-scientific claims. Can you imagine just how much indeed the world would change? No more political predators playing on the populace, but ilkas and plots to shift and kill metropolis. No more villains with the title in the Bible, holding phony temper Bibles like the stuff they teach is vital. Imagine it was normal to have to prove a claim you make. And folks really feel ashamed expressing content that was fake. It's not to say we never make mistakes. It's just to say we go out of our way to show the evidence it takes.
Remain skeptical while you travel the road. The reason stay strapped with logic and fast. That's what it is, yo. Keep reality intact to help the truth grow. Question every claim, especially the ones you believe in. Remain skeptical while you travel the road. The reason.
Oh, here we are. Well, welcome everyone to this week's edition of Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century. It's going to be an awesome show today because we got not one, but two artists that are joining us. Mr. Tombstone the Dead Man.
How's everybody doing? Glad to be here.
And in a minute, we are going to get Greydon Square coming on.
The Greydon Square.
Greydon Square, the one and only.
Right.
And of course, I'm your host, Larry Mendoza. And so we're going to get into that in a minute. And we're going to talk about the intersection of art and science and atheism and skepticism and music and all of that. It's going to be awesome because I'm a really big fan of combining the arts with education, because that's one of the best way to reach out to people.
Absolutely.
So we're going to get into that. But first, we have a couple of news items we would like to talk about. And the first one is climate change.
That's controversial.
Yeah, apparently that's controversial.
Yeah.
Now, most of you probably know that President Trump has decided, against the advice of many, even within his own administration, to pull out of the Paris Climate Treaty. Now, just to refresh everyone's memory, the Paris Treaty was, when was it? When did they agree to? Was it last year, I think it was?
I think it was last year.
And basically it's a promise for all the countries involved, which is pretty much the whole world with the exception of Syria and Nicaragua.
And Nicaragua is not doing it because they don't think it goes far enough.
Right. So. And so now we're like Syria, but the whole point was to try to commit some resources to try to, cut down on greenhouse gases and to slow down climate change and global climate temperatures. Well, our President of the United States thought it was a great idea to pull out of this. And one of the justifications that he said, and he didn't quote this directly, he didn't quote it by name, but he referenced an MIT study that was done in 2016.
Right.
This study basically said, it looked at what kind of impact the Paris Climate Agreement would have on global warming, climate change. And basically they said that within the next, over a 5 to 10 year period, global, global warming should slow between 0.6 degrees and 1.1 degrees Celsius by the end of this century.
Right.
Now, what Trump has done is that he's shown us a complete misunderstanding of what that means. And his justification was, it's not going to make a difference, so we're going to pull out.
Yeah, that was his thing. That was his thing about the temperature. He feels as though that there won't be enough of a stabilization of the temperature for this to even matter. That's basically what he's saying. The reality of the situation is that, one, this was a non-binding agreement. This is not like any of these countries were being forced to do this. And the reason that the United States should take, in my opinion, should take the lead in this is so they can craft things the way that so it does benefit us, and doesn't hurt us economically or anything. Us stepping away from it doesn't mean that the rest of the countries aren't going to do it. They're still going to do it.
And the thing is, it shows, what it does is it shows, first of all, a lack of leadership. We need to be the leaders in progressive forward thinking. Not necessarily progressive as in politics, but just forward thinking about how to solve some of these problems by pulling out. What we're telling the world is that we don't care. That's what it comes off as. It comes off as like that. And more importantly, it follows this trend of, and we'll talk a lot more about scientific literacy in this country, but it sort of follows this trend of completely misunderstanding scientific data and using it to your advantage they didn't even consult the authors of this study. They didn't call them. They didn't. They just took numbers. And we had the discussion before the show about correlation and what
causation,
data, what it means, and causation, what everything means.
Right.
And the thing is that the authors of this study do agree that the Paris Treaty is not the end all to everything, but it's a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And even if Trump thinks that 0.6 to 1.1 degrees Celsius doesn't make much of a difference, well, it does, because it could be the difference between the Maldives disappearing into the ocean, or not.
Right.
Small island nations, southern Florida, could disappear because of this slight increase. Now, anything that we do that's moving in the right direction, that slows down this process, is, I think, a good idea.
I agree.
But don't just what I don't understand is people, and it's not just
This is not just the president either. I've noticed this trend.
Right.
Period.
It's just scientific illiteracy. People don't understand how science works, what science is, and what the data means. Or some people do, but they like to manipulate it in their own way. And we can we were talking about gun violence studies and how a lot of the correlational data, either side could use the data. It depends on how you want to.
It largely depends on what narrative they're trying to push, and it's like I was having a conversation a little while ago with a friend of mine. Society runs on narratives. It runs off of it. What the populace is willing to accept and believe. And from whatever the populace believes, that's how policies are driven. So if they can take any kind of data and misrepresent it to go along with whatever narrative they want to push, they'll use that. And this is the reason why you'll find politicians get on these Sunday shows. And depending on what party they belong to, they have a set of talking points. And they don't stray off of those talking points. So when the journalist asks them a different type of question that's outside of that, that's when they get brain freeze at that point, because they're trying to claim the narrative. 24-hour news cycle.
Oh, yeah.
And then this is how, unfortunately, things like climate change are being used to people's advantage so they can claim a narrative and have the populace buy into it. And it's dangerous, like we were saying before about how the scientific illiteracy in this country, that's why it's dangerous, because people can then take these studies, these numbers and all of this, and then make whatever narrative suits them.
Yeah, and the thing is, the other interesting thing about this is that just about almost everybody was for this treaty.
Yeah.
The oil companies were for it.
Yeah.
Most of the Trump administration they were urging him not to pull out.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, but he pulled out of the advisory board because he just gave up on that.
Yeah.
And because Elon Musk was hoping to convince the president by being on this advisory board to reason with science and use science instead of doing what Trump did. So he quit. But also, when you have the Secretary of State, Tillerson, who was the ex-CEO of Mobil Oil, he even was telling Trump to stay in the treaty.
And he did not show up in the Rose Garden at that.
He did
you
not.
Notice that, right?
Right.
He did not show up in the Rose Garden.
The people that were against this were about 22 senators, Republican senators, that wrote to Trump to pull out of the treaty. And Steve Bannon, it was basically the isolationists and the nationalists who did not want to be part of this treaty. But again, this is how scientific illiteracy, even if Trump used this to his own advantage and he knew he was misrepresenting data, let's say he did, I doubt that's what he was doing. I think he really did misrepresent the data. But assuming that he was trying to be a little coy about it, the fact that most of the people out in a general population can take something like this and say, oh yeah, well, clearly climate change is a hoax because it's not even that important because it's, what is it, we're going to save 0.6 degrees Celsius? Half of Americans don't even know what Celsius even is. So that's where it gets dangerous, and that's where we need to change our narrative on science and how we teach science, which is why our, Tombstone and Greydon and people that use things like art and music to promote science and skeptical thinking is a good thing, and we need more of it. But before we get into that, there's another piece of news that we want to chat about?
And I'm going to, as I'm sure most of you already know, there was another attack in London, right there on the London Bridge. And I'm reading this actually from the NPR, where it says, London Metropolitan Police say at least 7 people have died and 48 others injured after the terrorist attacks at London Bridge and Borough Market on Saturday. Think about it, 48. And this is when, the attackers were in some sort of a van, bowled through people, and then got out of the van and started stabbing people. And I haven't heard so far if anyone has claimed responsibility for this. And sometimes, as we were reminded a little earlier, it can be sketchy even when some people do claim responsibility. It can be kind of sketchy.
Yeah.
But it's just sad, man. It's sad that continues to happen. And I think, my opinion, part of it is because when they're not doing so good on the battlefield, that's when you start seeing more of these attacks step up.
And they are losing in the battlefield. I mean, they're losing ground in Iraq and in Syria. They're slowly, they're all the land that they had sort of ISIS had conquered is sort of shrinking. Not assuming this is ISIS, but to respond to your remark, who was it that did it? Well, from what I understand, there's always it's either ISIS directly or ISIS inspired, or it's Al Qaeda directly or Al Qaeda inspired. Either way, what the important thing here is, it's the ideology. The beliefs drive behaviors. And what we're seeing is Muslims who take Islam to such an extreme that they think this is a perfectly valid and moral and ethical thing to do because that's what they believe. Because their book tells them that that's okay. Now, you got more moderate Muslims that think, no, that's a misinterpretation. Well, maybe so. Islam needs to be reformed, and it needs to be reformed from inside, I think. And so I think it's good that you have Muslims that stand up against this type of behavior. But, at the end of the day, it is the belief system that is driving this sort of behavior.
In most cases, you'll find that beliefs inform actions. It's a case of, if you really truly believe that you're having this war, this spiritual and physical war, you're going to do almost anything to win it. And that's where we're at with a lot of that.
And to these people, it's really like a huge, it's like their soul is dependent on it. But anyways, we got to cut to break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about some awesome, which involves music and maybe some comic books and science and cool shit, stuff like that. Sorry. See you in a bit.
When I was younger, I didn't want to admit I had a serious disease. Because of my diabetes, I lost the sight in my left eye. Misconceptions continue to surround this monster public health issue. But the simple truth is, diabetes can often be prevented and complications avoided. You're not alone. Understand the realities of diabetes and know that you can manage it and lead a full, active life.
There's an alarming trend in the world today. Everywhere you go, people are saying that cinema is dead. But cinema is not dead. My name is Count Simon Gauntley, and on my television program, Count Gauntley's Horrors from the Public Domain, I make it my mission to resurrect forgotten film classics. I promise to dredge the sewers and ford the stagnant streams of film history to ensure that no film is truly lost to the ages. Count Gauntley and FPA, keeping cinema alive! Alive! Alive!
Well, even though Joseph's been gone 18 months, we've made the decision to keep all his things as they were when he was here last. I finally just packed his toothbrush away like 6 months ago. It had been sitting on the counter in the bathroom. And I was cleaning the bathroom one day and I just thought, okay, it's time to put the toothbrush in the medicine cabinet.
So, I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
This is Richard Dawkins. Doing commercials is unfamiliar territory for me, but I'm inviting you to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, on Fairfax Public Access every Sunday. Each week, the hosts tackle wishful thinking, religion, pseudoscience, and the harm they cause, with a combination of facts, humor, and community involvement. They challenge believers to defend their faith and give you, the skeptic, a voice. With live call-ins for viewers and streaming on the World Wide Web, there's never a dull moment. Don't wait. Look at them now on Facebook and YouTube, and remember to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, or there'll be hell to pay.
Welcome back to Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century. Again, I'm Larry Mendoza, and with me I have...
Tombstone the Dead Man.
Tombstone the Dead Man, and joining us via Skype from his secret hero lair is Greydon Square, the one and only hip-hop artist, and amongst other things, visionary, skeptic, and promoter of science. Welcome, Greydon.
You forgot atheist, captain,
captain of
all-around bad guy.
Well, there's a lot of names you can go by, but what I would like to know is you're, a musician, and you've been into music for a while. Can you give us a little bit of history on what got you into music, and then from there, what got you into atheism, and then how did you meld in? And actually, this is, for you too. So,
Okay.
You guys can talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about how you guys then formed GU and explain what that is.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and hello to all your viewers. Also, peace to the Reaper Legion, one of the houses of Grand Unified,
Yes, sir.
everybody on that side of things. But, full disclosure, Tombstone and I are family, best friends. We've gone through the fire together.
Oh, yeah.
This relationship was informed by music and creativity. When I was, for the people who don't know, I grew up as an orphan. I grew up as a group home kid, bouncing from group home to group home, about 30 different ones in roughly a span of 19 years until I went to the military. And in that time, the one coping mechanism that I had to deal with the situation that I was in emotionally was music. I was in a group home when I was about 7 or 8 years old, where I was able to find my way into a piano regularly and be able to learn how to play the piano self-taught, and would later acquire a keyboard and make sure that I had some form of musical expression at my fingertips. And as I got older, one of the things that I noticed is that where I'm from, I'm from Compton, and everybody that I grew up with, most of the people that I grew up in the Compton and Watts area, were mostly into gang culture, myself included.
Right.
And, I grew up gang banging like a lot of my peers. And so the only music that we were ever, exposed to was West Coast gangster music, gangster rap. And so I grew up on that. And a lot of my early music was the traditional West Coast gangster, bang your hood,
Right.
rep your set kind of
reflected
music.
your
It
environment.
reflected my reality.
Right.
But then there was also another reality that was informed by that, which was my standing as an orphan and as a group home kid. So I talked a lot about that. But then, in my childhood, I was exposed to science fiction, and it shaped my perception as to the value that gangbanging may have had, as opposed to learning and being interested in science and technology. So at a crossroads, at about 19 years old, I was getting out of being locked up, and I was offered the opportunity to go to the military, the United States Army. I took it, and while I was in the Army, I got deployed. 9/11 happened, and I got deployed to Iraq. And when I was in Iraq deployed, I learned, I tell people this all the time, the differences between society and nature. And what it left me with was a strong impression there that I brought back to the States. And when I went to school, when I decided I wanted to go to school for sound engineering and then later on physics, my experiences in Iraq informed how I would view the new information and how I would apply that new information to the things I had already believed. So at about 26 years old, I started to question my fundamental beliefs. I started to question, the Christianity that had been programmed, in me. And I started to consider upgrading my operating system.
Right.
I was running, the religious Windows 95, and I got a chance to upgrade to Windows XP or
I like
Windows
that
7
analogy,
or whatever.
Upgrading your operating system.
Yeah. Because listen, I tell people this all the time. Atheism as an operating system isn't perfect. It has flaws too.
Exactly.
But has far less bugs than Windows 95. Okay,
Right.
and we all know that. So you would always take Windows 7 or Windows 8 or Windows 10 over Windows 95. We know that.
Right.
So if there's another operating system that comes later on in life that has evidence that we can, subscribe to, then I'm willing to consider upgrading to that operating system.
Absolutely.
But I don't want to take up too much time. Tombstone, the question was also directed at you as well.
Yeah, so what's your story?
Basically, I grew up in, while it wasn't a serious gang area because it hadn't really reached us yet, it was a pretty, angry area in Baltimore,
This
west
is
side of
Baltimore,
Baltimore.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
west side of Baltimore over there, Emerson Village. And much like Greydon, my environment informed my music as well. And if you listen to some of my earlier work, it reflected the environment.
Right.
But the thing is, when I started listening to certain other artists like KRS-One and Rakim, they showed that you can put information in music. And you can actually talk about something other than your tennis shoes, your gold chain, or whatever.
Right.
And I started kind of gravitating towards that. And initially, it was really just a way for me to show my friends that I could do it because I had two friends that were doing it, that were rhyming all the time. And they thought that it was something that I wouldn't be able to do and express that one day. And I was, what are you talking about? It's just putting words together that rhyme. What are you talking about? So I was determined that I would be ready for them the next time they were out there spitting bars. So I wrote a couple of bars, and while they was doing their thing, when they were done, I smashed them both.
That's how it always begins.
I smashed them both. And the response I got from it, from them and others that were standing there, was encouraging. So I kept doing it, but it was mostly just a hobby at that time, And at this point now, I've been doing it for over 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've been a hip-hop artist for 30 years.
Yep.
That's why his opinion about hip-hop and about information is always considered by me. He's the first person I go to when I ever have a question about creativity or artistic direction or confronting something that I had. I always just go to Tombstone.
And that's awesome, your guys' dynamic, because you in order for your projects to work, you have to use each other's strengths. And each one of you has, and other artists within the GE community, everyone has their own strengths. And in order for this to work, it's great that you guys recognize that and use each other in that way. My understanding is, I remember we were talking a while back, and you were into metal music before you were into hip hop. My understanding, is that correct?
Yeah, that is true. I was heavy into the whole metal thing. That's what I listened to.
Awesome.
And it's funny because my brother, he had this big boom box that had Christmas lights around it that would vibrate every time the bass hit. So ordinarily, when he had the boom box, he was playing the typical urban theme music. But when I had it on the porch, I'm rocking Megadeth, rocking all that stuff. And it was odd to the people and other people in the neighborhood because this wasn't the music that they listened to.
Right, exactly.
But I will tell you this. A lot of my friends that I'm still in contact with now, they started liking more of the metal
stuff
because of my influence and introducing it to them. So, yeah.
For the record, metal is dope.
That's right.
Metal is dope.
I was at Iron Maiden
metal
last night.
Yeah.
I went to see Iron Maiden, last night, and me and my brother always go to see Iron Maiden every time they come by near here because every year we're like, oh man, this might be the last year we're going to see them. You know, they're old. It might be the last tour.
Right.
And we've been saying that for the last 10, 15 years. Because they keep putting out albums. They keep, man, these guys they're awesome. But yeah, but the thing is music. And I think there's always like, I never understood this divide between, I mean, if you don't like a certain style of music, that's fine.
Right.
But it seems to be that, you know, metalheads don't like rap, and rap.
Yeah, I was just going to say
metal.
that. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
There is a divide between the cultures that I noticed this when I was growing up. I'm sure Tombstone noticed it as well in the previous years. But one thing that I noticed was that it wasn't really that the artists had so much of a problem with each other's art. It was the fan base.
The fan base.
Now,
the fan base.
where you found the bridge was I found that punk was more likely to be cool with hip-hoppers than they were to be with metalheads, which was weird to me, especially growing up in the 90s where it was like, you know, you had Black Flag and a couple of other bands I couldn't call off the top of my head, but you had these like punk bands who were like exposing punk kids and middle-class suburban white kids to hip-hop.
Yep.
And it helped us. It absolutely helped, you know, generate kind of mainstream acceptance of a culture that had been relegated to the fringes of society.
And I think you hit the nail on the head when you say culture, because each, you know, hip hop has a rich history, and it grew out of the ghettos of New York.
Right.
You know, essentially that's where, you know, it kind of, you know, the hip hop, the break dance and the bebop and all that. And it kind of grew from that. So other cultures, other people that didn't live within that reality, you know, even to this day, you know, it's like they don't understand it. It's like, what is this, all this rap and hip hop? But, you know, it became mainstream now later on. But I think it's a cultural divide. Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head with that. Now, real quick, what you guys, so let's talk about Grand Unified.
Okay.
Great, and I understand that is your brainchild. So can you tell us what that is?
Well, GU was an idea. Right? Like, if I could describe Grand Unified as to what it actually was, the general idea behind Grand Unified was that people who created music, people who created art, could use the art that they could create to educate and inform people. Go ahead.
And not just music, right? Any type of art, correct? Whether it's in the form of graphic design, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. No. The misconception is that, you know, GU was just a rap group.
Right.
And we were just a rap crew. And we've obviously had to correct that many of times. We have scientists with PhDs within our collectives. We have, you know, graphic design artists. We have biologists, botanists. Awesome. You know, our community is filled with creatives who essentially understand that our purpose and our goal, our motivation, is to use the abilities that we have to inspire other people to learn and inform themselves so that we can move towards becoming a type 1 civilization.
And what is a type 1 civilization?
Well, this goes back to the Nikolai Kardashev classification of civilizations. A lot of people know them as K1, K2, or K3 type civilizations. And basically, to give a quick breakdown, type 1 civilization is a species that is globally united in the context of energy and ability and having control over its natural resources. You know, it can basically produce and consume the entire energy of a planet regularly. And so, you know, you talk about being a type 1, which is what we're on the verge of. I think the latest estimates say we're at like 0.7. And then you got type 2, which is able to, you know, colonize their host star, or type 3 able to colonize multiple stars or being on a galactic level. So it just creates this planetary, stellar, galactic hierarchy. Exactly. That, you know, humanity, I would like to see humanity join, because to me, in my opinion, it's a part of the prime directive and the old Star Trek idea that post-warp species don't interact with pre-warp species. Right. And I feel like we are just under pre-warp in that context. So, at the end of the day, the general idea was to inform people to help them get to type 1 on that scale.
Fantastic. And you guys, both you and Landon and Tombstone here have a very large musical library. And I know you've been working with music for a while. I think when I first got introduced to your music was back in 2007, I think, around that time. And yours, I got introduced to your music during the first Reason rally in DC, and I thought this is great. I mean, it's great. So how many people do you have in this Grand Unified right now? How many people would you say are in?
Well, Grand Unified is a collective made up of many different houses, we call them. Yeah. And, each house has its own autonomy and independence. For instance, Tombstone's house, Reaper Legion, is very media focused, very video focused. They do content about, they got this show called Ike's Game Room, where one of our members, Ike D's, he plays, he's a crazy Battlefield player. He plays Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 4. And he basically records this crazy footage that you would never really see anywhere else of him either capturing or him doing.
Right.
They talk about comic books and different like comic book TV shows and movies that come out. So it's very much of the geek culture. Whereas in like low technology, another house of Grand Unified is primarily a hip hop house.
Gotcha.
And there's sci-fi and scientific and Yossi Pitus and Dr. Evo and these guys. And then there's, the progeny of ancients, with, Gats and Johnny Hoax and Sickness and those guys. And, you got, just different aspects of Grand Unified broken up, under different
and each one doing
houses.
What they like.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
No,
awesome.
it's definitely like we don't try to, like, I don't tell Tombstone, hey, in your house you should be doing X, Y, and Z. We come together, we talk about the state, we talk about the temperature of Grand Unified, but each house has its own autonomy. We've always described ourselves as the anti-label. We didn't want anybody to feel like, they're taking orders from a high.
From a hierarchy,
and then basically, from a hierarchy. We didn't like the top-down leadership structure.
Everybody kind of joins in and gives their perspective, their ideas. They contribute to what they know.
Right.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
Speaking of that, I know that, and I didn't know this was happening until I was talking to Tombstone here, but you guys are working on some cool project involving a comic book, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Absolutely.
We are.
What is the name of this comic book?
It's called Extropy and Entropy. We call it E&E just for short, just because we've been talking about it for a long time. But Tombstone, you want to give him a little bit of the backstory behind it?
And then we do have have the song and the video, which actually, you know what? Why don't we play that first?
Okay.
And then you can give us some commentary on it. Let's go ahead and play the video.
It's real simple. On one side, you have an ancient warrior race of beings that represent entropy, and on the other side, you have an advanced race of beings that represent extropy. Sooner or later, these forces will collide.
For thousands of years, we suffered no peers. Equals of rivals, none of them can survive around here. We bathed in the blood of enemies that threaten with malice. Impale the heads of kings on spikes outside of their palace. Re-entire civilizations, we made them extinct. For trying to circumvent the balance, they were gone in the blink. A bona fide galaxy busted, a Reaper Armada. So any nation breaking the rules, that we come in the stomp. Yeah, we are legion, manifestations of purest entropy, entropic empire, annihilated in infinity. We are not deaf and know those rumors persist. We are the things that make it possible for death to exist. These lower species of specks that we're not bound to respect. We hardly notice them, even with our boots on their neck. The warrior class, we are the standard, the epitome. The masters of the massacre, loyal to Lord Entropy. Two empires of polar opposite sides. Inevitability that a conflict arise. The deadliest armada determine who survives. When worlds collide, there are two empires of polar opposite sides. Inevitability that a conflict arise. The deadliest armada determine who survives. When worlds collide.
Type 2.7 in ascending. My race crosses light years like they're inches. It's quite weird. With our gear, we put fear in the abstract. Superior tech, only adhere to the math facts. Past that, we're masters of quadrivium. Exponential growth in the interim. Few can match that. Imperium for nearly a millennium. Peaceful race, but won't give in to anyone. No. The upper echelon who bonds with the lexicon. Experts in quintessence, assumptions of us are extra wrong. The ultimate expression of intelligence. If we can't learn from it, it's irrelevant. People of the measurement, mentor of the species that are lesser than. In a thinking war, we expect to win. We personify extropy. Gray of extropia will modify destiny without the fly weaponry.
Two empires of polar opposite sides. Inevitability that a conflict arise. The deadliest armada determine who survives. When worlds collide, when worlds collide. There are two empires of polar opposite sides. Inevitability that a conflict arise. The deadliest armada determine who survives. When worlds collide, when worlds collide.
Man, that was awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
And it shows also a culmination of not just the music, but the art. That's some amazing artwork, by the way. And you guys found some awesome illustrators.
Joseph Arnold.
Joseph Arnold. First and Gabriel Zales,
Sandoval.
It's Sandoval. I'm sorry, we have a Gabriel Zales in GU. Peace to Gabriel Zales. But Gabriel Sandoval, I think is his name, right?
Yep.
Yeah, is our colorist, and then we have a letterer named Dave Miles.
Yep.
Who does the lettering for the comic book as well. So
awesome. So tell us a little bit about what this is about. Also explain entropy and extropy, and it sounds very scientific and nerdy.
Yeah, very much so. So basically, the story is about two different groups, species of beings that exist in a different universe.
Okay.
The one group is a very warlike, warrior class group, and those are the entropics. And they are the physical manifestation of entropy, which, as any of you know, in the second law of thermodynamics, basically is talking about closed systems and things like that. But to make it simple, it's the reason why things rot, decay, fall apart, what have you. Then the other species are the extropians, and Greydon got this concept. It's a concept, extropy. Basically means it's a pseudo-scientific principle that life will expand indefinitely and in an orderly, progressive way throughout the entire universe by means of human intelligence and technology. That species is very advanced technology-wise, and they are all about just increasing their knowledge. They started off as very similar to humans now, and they evolved up to where they are through their technology and the use of their mind. These two species have, one has a leader, and that's Lord Entropy. The other species, the extropians, they don't really have a leadership structure like that, but they do have a head scientist, and that is Gray of Extropia. The leader of the entropics and the head scientist of the extropians become friends. But they have wildly different ways of viewing reality, and their cultures are different, and of course it's going to cause a clash.
Conflict.
Larry.
Well, and then also not to get too much of a square.
God's here.
God is joining us again. Yes.
I'm very confused.
How come God never just popped?
You're very confused?
This is way above my head. Which should tell you
Tell
it's
God I
true.
said he don't want to battle. Tell God I said he don't want to battle at all.
You should listen to these guys. It sounds like they know what they're talking about.
I thought hip-hop was just about bling.
Yeah, well.
No. What's interesting about this project that we're doing is we're tying the music aspect to the art aspect. So for every issue that will come out for Extropy and Entropy, there will be an album released for that issue. And that album will contain basically our in-universe personas rapping from their perspectives and almost giving internal insight as to their thought process. Even like, the song you guys just heard, When Worlds Collide. I was listening to that song. I forgot how dope that song actually was. We were saying some crazy stuff in there. I mean, there's just the way that we try to sculpt out visually in your imagination what these races and what these entities would be like. Gray of Extropia, his motivations, and why he thinks the way that he thinks, and why his species thinks the way that they think. Is it an extension of my personality? Is Malik, Lord Entropy, an extension of Tombstone, the dead man's personality? Absolutely. But what we tried to do is we tried to put them in an environment where like our friendship, it can be tested by external forces, and the testament to the story will be the strength of the friendship.
Exactly.
And how these two beings are now forced, even as friends who have gone through a traumatic experience, which, like I said, I'm not going to give anything away.
Sure.
Right.
But there's something at the end of the issue zero that happens that basically strands them somewhere together. And they now, even being friends, have a bit of animosity towards each other because they blame each other for them being in that situation. So the friendship is tested, the bonds are tested, and yet because of their need for each other, it will almost be shown that they need each other even more than ever, even now, because in order to fix what was left behind, they're going to have to use the combined positive attributes of both of their personalities.
Absolutely.
So Tombstone's Lord Entropy's combat acumen and his, warrior mentality, and Gray's scientific understanding and his curiosity and stuff like that. While it will put them in situations that are highly dangerous, it will also let them realize things about each other that they didn't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man, that's it seems like a very creative project that just you guys are taking a lot of different perspectives and putting it in within this like science fiction comic book.
And that's the thing.
That's awesome.
We wanted to make sure, because both Greydon and I are comic book fans, we wanted to make sure that any comic book fan would read the story and be into it. We didn't want, like we saw with some artists, they do these little vanity projects, and it doesn't look authentic, and any comic book fan would look at that stuff and go, wait, that's not the real deal. That's not something that people actually cared about enough to put the quality in it. We actually care about the story, we care about the characters we create. That's why it took so long for us to get to a certain point with it. That and the fact that we were a complete novice at creating a comic book company. But even so with that, we wanted to make sure that the story had depth to it. We wanted to cover a wide range of topics, and also we wanted to use it to educate to a certain degree. That's why in each issue, whatever scientific terms we use throughout the course of that story, there will be a page at the end to explain their actual meanings and where they come from, and that, so we can educate.
So you're educating while entertaining, while teaching life lessons. I mean, it seems like this story is going to have it's going to be very it's going to be have a lot of depth to it. Is what it
it spans universes.
Figuratively and
literally, right?
Right. That's great. And so when or how far are you guys from finishing the first issue, issue 0, and where are you guys within?
Well, the story itself is finished.
Okay.
Later on this summer, we're probably going to do a crowdfunding or whatever to get it finished, because we still have artists that we need to pay. We still have things that we have to do to get it out there. But it's something, like I said, it's a project that Greydon and I have been working on for a long time. We've geeked out over it. On numerous occasions, spending hours at night on Skype.
Oh yeah.
Conceptualizing.
Don't tell them about TV tropes.
And falling into the many black holes of TV tropes. So it's something that's it's a project that's dear to our hearts. It's one that we feel also it helps to expand our audience, because there are people that have never heard of our music that are in the comic books that might come across the comic book.
Absolutely.
So that's basically where we are with that.
And expanding knowledge. I mean, it's using the media to educate, and I think that's one of the best things about art, is that you can do that. And as you said earlier, it's okay to have a message in music. Positive message.
It doesn't have to be corny.
No.
It doesn't have to be corny.
And that's awesome. And I mean, I'm looking forward to this project, and I hope it all works well for you guys. So whenever you guys start crowdfunding, just let me know and I'll help promote it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let me switch a little bit of gears here. We got about maybe 10 minutes left or so, 11 minutes or so. But how many, you guys have what? How many albums do you have out now, Greydon? It's what, about 15, 20?
Wow. I wish, man. I wish I had 15 or 20 albums out. No, I have 5 solo albums.
Okay.
I have one joint album, which is called Ryukin Verses, with me and my partner in rhyme, C. Gats, which I just did a song with recently called Tear It Down, which is a beautiful song. I love that, so I can't wait for people to hear it. But and then I also have the Low Technology crew, which is, you know, a house of GU that I started about a year ago, which they're getting ready to release an album in about a month.
Good.
But I also have the Extropy and Entropy album I'm doing with Tombstone, which we have a lot of content. We just haven't released it because the album, it has to be released in conjunction with the album. So we can't just, you know, put it out like that. But yeah, no, I've got a bunch of material out there. I also have a subscription service with a bunch of unreleased material that a lot of people don't really know about. But if you're interested, you know, GreydonSquare.bandcamp.com is always a good place to find unreleased Greydon Square material because I got a lot of stuff.
Yeah. What about you?
Man, let's see. I have 6 albums that were released through for wide distribution, and then I have 2 other albums on my Bandcamp subscription that are just for my Bandcamp subscribers.
Okay.
And like I said, you know, I was very busy these last, I don't know, 5 years, because I was releasing like an album a year, and sometimes 2 albums in the course of a year. So that's how I wound up amassing so much content.
So it's you the one that has 15, 20 albums.
Well, you know, it seems like that sometimes. But I did I slowed down a bit because I wanted to build up some of the other things that I was doing. And like, for instance, my video projects, and of course the comic book. And, you know, I've gotten really, once again, heavy into YouTube.
And let's not forget that Tombstone here, along with his Adequate, did the music for our show.
We sure did.
Yeah,
in the beginning. That's this guy right here.
Right.
And Adequate, right?
Adequate.
Yeah, cool. And we've had Adequate and we've added Sickness on our show as well, which are all part of the
Those were good episodes, too.
So
those were good episodes. So this is like breaking new ground, actually, because now you had all of us on there, and now you have the founder himself.
I've actually been trying to get you to come on the show for such a long time. It's just that, you know, between my schedule and your schedule, and so I'm glad it finally worked out. And
don't sell yourself short, Tombstone. You helped co-found this as well. Without your contribution and Blue Picasso's contribution in founding this, it's still an idea in my head. So let that be a lesson. Anybody out there with an idea, you can't do it alone. No matter how good the idea is, you need good people, you know, who believe in you and believe in your idea to help you accomplish that.
Absolutely.
And that's also a very good. It shows leadership. You know, if you're able to, you know, not take full credit. It's mine. It's mine. No, you know, when it is a collaboration, that's what makes it wonderful.
Right. And Greydon walked around like Tony Stark, Iron Man, trying to form the Avengers in 2010.
I did, and I think I succeeded. I think I took every one of the dope underground secular artists, you know, they ended up kind of gravitating towards GU and are associated in some way, shape, or form with GU. So I think we definitely did what we were supposed to do.
Were you surprised to find so many atheist or skeptical artists out there?
I was surprised, actually, especially the amount of, you know, African-American atheist rappers that people claim never existed.
Didn't exist, right.
And meanwhile, you know, there were tons of them. And to me, you know, Grand Unified became kind of so Tombstone's analogy of the Avengers is not far off. Like, the Avengers is an open roster. People come and go. GU is the same way. You know, there are people who were a part of GU who left the organization and new people who've come in within the last 12 months. So for us, it was about creating an environment that people can come into and say, hey, you know, I feel comfortable with these guys creatively, and therefore I'm going to present, and I know I can get the type of positive criticism and constructive criticism that's going to make me get better. We have an artist, just briefly, not an artist, but, you know, a member of our collective named Tack, and I remember having a conversation with Tack, you know, about a year ago about learning what he needed to learn in, you know, music and sound engineering in order to be a competent sound engineer. And a year later, he's going to school for it. He's investing all of his time into learning about the craft of sound engineering and sound production. And he is light years from where he was a year ago. And that's the type of growth we try to foster.
Mentorship, that's awesome.
And he lives in Dubois, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's great that this is becoming also a venue for people to learn and grow in their related art, whatever the case that may be. Sound engineering, videography, choreography, whatever, art. And it's great that you guys have created an environment that you can mentor people. People that have more experience can help those. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, it really helps expand, the music, everything.
Absolutely.
Education. So that's wonderful. Yeah. Well, let's switch some gears right now. I want to talk about both of you can take it, whoever wants to go first. What do you feel about, we talked about scientific literacy, because that's also a big thing about your music that you guys talk a lot about. Where are we with that, and what do you guys think will turn this ship around?
If I may, I am a strong proponent of the idea that it's the narrative that needs to change a lot of times in order to get people inspired to change themselves. Many times the narrative that's being used about science is one where it almost makes the average layperson feel as though they'll never really get it. It's too highbrow, they don't understand it. So I'm thinking, just in my point of view, using my art helps kind of bring it to a level where they can actually digest it, they can actually feel as though they can learn it, and inspire them to want to learn it. And that's how pretty much Greydon uses his art the same way. And I think it's about changing the narrative. If we can change the narrative about that science is not just for an elite few, all of us benefit from it. Just because you have a cell phone, do you know how your cell phone works? Do you know how it got to be the way it is now? That's all science, so all of us benefit from it. And I think once we change the narrative, I think more people will start to become more scientific literate because they want to, because it's interesting to them.
I think there's an aspect of values that should be discussed when talking about scientific literacy, in that in certain communities, information and intelligence is valued more than others. That's something we can't avoid, okay? I grew up in an area where being smart wasn't the best thing you could have been. And so it made you a target. It made you prey for a lot of people because they thought that people who were into science and technology were fundamentally weak. And not able to defend themselves in nature. So a lot of people had to put on these facades that you were something that you didn't really want to be. There's a lot of kids running around LA right now who want to be at science camp, who want to go to astronomy camp or math camp, but they live in South Central and they can't afford it. So therefore they got to run with the homies. And they got to get this paper. So that's a lost mind, in my opinion. And I feel like if I can, with the West Coast heritage that I have, like at the end of the day, I'm a West Coast artist. I do everything from the West Coast artist perspective. I grew up in that culture. So if I can appeal to another young West Coast mind from the urban community, black, brown, white, whatever, I feel like that will expose him to say, hey, I may live in Compton, I may live in Gardena, I may live in Long Beach, but this dude is talking about some higher order stuff, and I can relate to that, and therefore I can pursue that from where I am right now.
Yeah, and I think you hit also the nail on the head is that there are a lot of very smart minds in these communities, but they don't pursue that route because they have to survive. I mean, that's basically what they're trying to do, survive.
And their environment doesn't value it. And like Greydon said, there's a value shift that has to take place to support these kids. And it's like you said, if they see an artist that they relate to and he's making it cool to be smart, cool to know that stuff, they feel more confident in expressing what they really actually are into.
Yeah, I should probably take this moment to give a shout out to the family and friends of the educated rapper who passed away just the other night, actually. In an era of mumble rap, this was a guy who embraced the idea of being an educated rapper and wore that moniker his entire career. Even when hip-hop went towards ignorance, he still, maintained that moniker and wanted to inspire people to educate themselves. So rest in peace, educated rapper. My condolences goes out to all his friends and family.
Yeah, our condolences as well.
Absolutely.
Lost a great mind and, and great educators and, yeah, so good. Well, you guys, at least there's others that are picking up this sort of educational type of rap
Right.
and bringing it to a community where normally this community would not be exposed to things like entropy or extropy or science, any scientific principles.
Right.
So hopefully through music we can reach some of these people and through the art, and that's, I think, is genius. I think we need to shift our paradigm on how we educate, and I think art is integral in doing that.
Agreed.
Speaking of, we got about 3 minutes, about 2 minutes and 45 seconds really, but I want to talk a little bit about marijuana. Because, and here's the reason why. It ties into scientific literacy. Right now, there really is no reason to have it illegal.
None at all.
And I think that the reason why it is illegal is, as the Nixon administration acknowledged, is to mass incarcerate black men and leftists. What is your perspective, either one of you, on the legalization, or keep it criminalized, not criminalized?
Well, I mean, just to keep it brief, I feel like the narrative of marijuana was set in the reefer madness days, and that narrative has never been completely challenged.
Right.
The idea that only blacks and other minorities smoke weed or use marijuana, or that it's only used to get people high, it's not true. It's just simply not true. And that is still kind of culturally where a lot of people are with it. They think that about marijuana. And if we can change that narrative, I believe we can change people's perceptions of why it should be legal. But until we address that, I don't think anything's going to change with the ideology that a lot of people have regarding it.
Like anything else, like atheism, it's about normalization, normalizing these issues, these things that shouldn't have been, we have an opioid crisis that people are dying every day from heroin overdose, yet because they're addicted to painkillers, and that's legal. But yet,
Right, I agree.
It's kind of backwards, and I think the science behind all of this needs to be clearly presented and explained, and we need to stop with these nonsensical laws and use
tactics.
and scare
The
tactics.
last thing we want to do is put people in cages for it. Like, that to me is the worst. The worst decision making of all is to say, we're trying to control your pharmacological state, mental state, and if you decide to use this substance to affect your brain chemistry this way, we're going to put you in a cage. To me, that's ridiculous.
It's insane. It's insane. Now we got about 15 seconds left, so we're going to end it there with that. But I do want to thank you so much for coming, Greydon and Tombstone.
Very welcome.
And I hope we can have this conversation again, because there's a lot more we want to talk. But right now, unfortunately,
have me on anytime.
Absolutely. We're out of time for now, so thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys next time.